Manuel here. Now, today, I want to investigate the question of the relationship between food inflation, IMF conditionalities, and the Kenyan tax regime. So, we have before us a chart with Kenya average household disposable income and food expenditure. And here I have tried to simulate a household and how much it spends on its income, right? The average household with the per capita income, assumed per capita income of $2,257, and then how much it spends on food and non food expenditures before a food price shock, and then how much it spends on food and non food expenditures after a food price shock. Now, this idea came from a training given by one Peter Doyle on some research that this economist had been doing on the IMF's uh, Kenya program. This training was given to members of the Institute of Economic Affairs and its staff around fall 2023. And Peter Doyle, alongside Kwame Owino and Maureen Barasa, two other economists working at the Institute of Economic Affairs, did follow it up with a paper called And Then the Floods. That is the title of the paper. You can Google that, download it, and read more. Now, between January 2019 and December 2022, the price of food in Kenya relative to non food items rose by 30%. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics reports that on average, Kenyan households spend about 33% of their incomes on food. Of Kenya's 12 million households, those lower down on the income scale spend almost 50% of their income on food. The World Bank reported that by the year 2022, Kenya's per capita income was $2,257. On a monthly basis, the average Kenyan household made 188 US dollars. If this household spent 50% of its income on food, it would have 94.04 US dollars left in disposable income to spend on non-food items. If a household that spends almost 50% of its income on food maintained its income since 2019 level with non-food prices, that is, non-food prices did not change, then by the end of the 4 years following the year 2019, the real income of that household would have fallen by 15%. That is, following the income shock induced by COVID-19, the poorest households in Kenya endured downward pressure on their incomes induced by inflation. Because the IMF program privileged tax hikes, this is an important contextualization of the path towards debt sustainability that the Kenyan government elected to take. The Kenyan government was raising tax rates while the citizens faced considerable income shocks. Although some pundits and the government blamed the 2023 finance bill protests on political expediency, this data suggests that the protests were inspired by a very real, very visceral experience. This does not mean that previous protests were superficial in their content, but rather that there are underlying income trends that explain the explosive, intense, and still ongoing protests against the Finance Bill 2024. Now, I made this chart just as the protests were going on. The protests are no longer a fixture of everyday politics in Kenya, but their after effects do include heightened attention towards other underlying issues in governance. Although the public has yet to fully grasp the the economic the underlying economic trends, it is already apparent to them that their overall economic welfare is not improving and that rather it's sliding backwards. This they need no one to tell them. It is almost as though we, digging into the data, are just starting to discover what it is that made it so that many households came out, poured out onto the streets in protest. Thank you, and have a good afternoon and a good night.